The moving truck rumbled away from the curb just as Rebecca Zimmerman dropped the last box on her new living room floor. And through the window, she caught sight of a man standing on the balcony next door, his silhouette sharp against the evening sky, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. She turned away quickly, pushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she surveyed the chaos of cardboard boxes surrounding her. This penthouse apartment was smaller than her last place, but the view of the city skyline made up for it. After 3 years of saving every penny from her job as a museum curator, she had finally scraped together enough for the down payment on this place. It was hers, and that feeling of ownership filled her chest with warmth, despite the exhaustion settling into her bones. Rebecca walked to the window, unable to resist another glance at the neighboring balcony. The man was gone now, leaving only the soft glow of lights from inside his apartment. She shook her head at herself. This was ridiculous. She had just ended a relationship 6 months ago with Marcus, and the last thing she needed was to develop some schoolgirl crush on a neighbor she had not even met. The next morning arrived too quickly, sunlight streaming through the bare windows and pulling her from a restless sleep on the couch. She had been too tired to set up her bed frame, so she had crashed with a blanket and pillow on the leather sectional that had been delivered the day before. Her neck protested as she sat up, and she groaned, reaching for her phone to check the time. 8:30. She had the whole weekend to unpack, but first she desperately needed coffee. After a quick shower in the surprisingly spacious bathroom, Rebecca pulled on jeans and a soft green sweater, grabbed her purse and headed out. The hallway was quiet, all polished marble floors and expensive light fixtures. She had known this building was upscale when she toured it, but living here felt different than visiting. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. The doors were halfway closed when a hand shot through, triggering them to reopen. Rebecca looked up and felt her heart skip as the man from the balcony stepped inside. He was taller than she had realized, with dark hair that looked artfully disheveled and eyes so blue they seemed almost unreal. He wore a fitted black Henley and dark jeans, casual but somehow expensive looking, and when he smiled at her she felt heat creep up her neck. "Morning," he said, his voice deep and warm. "You must be the new neighbor. I saw the moving truck yesterday." "That obvious." Rebecca managed, returning his smile with what she hoped was a casual expression. "Rebecca Zimmerman. I moved into 42B. Warren Gallagher, 42A." He extended his hand, and when she took it, his grip was firm and warm. "Welcome to the building. How are you settling in?" "Slowly," she admitted, grateful when the elevator started moving and gave her an excuse to focus on something other than his face. "I have about 1,000,000 boxes to unpack, and I have not even attempted to assemble any furniture yet." "That is the worst part," Warren said, leaning against the elevator wall with an easy confidence that should have seemed arrogant but somehow did not. "I remember when I moved in. Spent 3 days trying to put together a bookshelf before I finally admitted defeat and called someone." Rebecca laughed despite herself. "That is oddly comforting. I was starting to think I was the only person in the world who struggles with furniture assembly." "Definitely not," he assured her, and there was something in his eyes that made her stomach flip. "If you need any recommendations for services, or just want to borrow tools, I am right next door." The elevator reached the ground floor, and they stepped out together into the bright, modern lobby. A doorman nodded at them both, saying, "Good morning, Mr. Gallagher," Miss Zimmerman with professional warmth. Rebecca felt a flutter of something, maybe belonging, at being recognized already. "I was just heading to grab coffee," Warren said as they reached the front doors. "There is a great place 2 blocks down if you are interested. My treat," as a welcome to the neighborhood. Rebecca knew she should probably say no. She had a million things to do, and getting involved with a neighbor was typically a terrible idea. But something about Warren made her want to throw caution aside. "Sure," she heard herself say. "That sounds nice." They walked side by side through the crisp autumn morning, and Rebecca found herself relaxing into easy conversation. Warren asked about her work, and his eyes lit up with genuine interest when she told him about the museum. "So you work with art all day?" he asked, pausing at a crosswalk. "That must be incredible." "It is," Rebecca said, unable to keep the passion from her voice. "Right now I am working on curating an exhibit of Renaissance pieces on loan from European museums. It is like solving a puzzle, figuring out how to present the work in a way that tells a story." "I would love to see it sometime," Warren said, and she got the impression he actually meant it. "I have always appreciated art, but never really understood it the way experts do." "You do not have to be an expert to appreciate it," Rebecca told him as they reached the coffee shop, a cozy place with large windows and the rich smell of fresh beans. "That is the whole point. Art should speak to everyone, not just people with degrees." Warren held the door open for her, and they stepped inside. The barista greeted Warren by name, which made Rebecca wonder how often he came here. They ordered, Warren insisting on paying despite her protests, and found a small table by the window. "So what do you do?" Rebecca asked, wrapping her hands around her latte. "Besides rescuing new neighbors who have not had their morning caffeine." Something flickered across Warren's face, too quick for her to identify. "I work in real estate development," he said after a moment. "Commercial properties mostly. Office buildings, retail spaces, that kind of thing." "That sounds interesting," Rebecca said, though she knew next to nothing about real estate. "Is it based here in the city?" "Yeah, my office is downtown," Warren said, and she noticed he seemed more comfortable now that the subject had shifted slightly. "I have been in the industry for about 10 years. Started right out of college and worked my way up." They talked for over an hour, long enough that Rebecca's coffee grew cold and she had to check her phone twice to believe how much time had passed. Warren was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh more than she had in months. He asked questions that showed he was actually listening, not just waiting for his turn to talk, and when she told stories about disastrous first dates or museum mishaps, his laughter felt genuine. Finally, reluctantly, Rebecca said, "I should probably get back. Those boxes will not unpack themselves." "Right," Warren said, standing and grabbing both their empty cups to toss in the recycling. "I have some work to catch up on anyway." They walked back to the building together, and Rebecca found herself hyper-aware of how close he was, the way their shoulders almost brushed with each step. In the elevator, the silence felt charged with something unspoken, and when they reached their floor, Warren paused. "Thanks for the company this morning," he said. "It was really nice getting to know you, Rebecca." "Thanks for the coffee," she replied, pulling out her keys. "And the conversation," Warren smiled, that same warm expression that made her knees feel weak. "Anytime. Seriously, if you need anything, just knock." Rebecca let herself into her apartment, closing the door and leaning against it with a ridiculous smile on her face. This was dangerous. She barely knew Warren, and already she could feel herself getting pulled in. But maybe, she thought, as she surveyed the boxes waiting for her attention, maybe that was okay. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. The weekend passed in a blur of unpacking and organizing. Rebecca threw herself into the work, partly because it needed to be done and partly to keep herself from obsessing over her attractive neighbor. She saw Warren a few times in passing, Once when she was dragging a broken-down box to the recycling room and he helped her carry it, and once when they both happened to be leaving for work on Monday morning. "How is the unpacking going?" he asked as they rode the elevator down together. "Almost done," Rebecca said, adjusting the strap of her work bag. "Just the bedroom left, and that is mostly clothes." "That is impressive," Warren said. "Most people take weeks." "I have a system," Rebecca told him with a grin. "Unpack one box, reward myself with exactly one episode of television. Very scientific." Warren laughed, and the sound did things to her insides that she tried very hard to ignore. "I will have to remember that method." They parted ways in the lobby, Warren heading for the parking garage while Rebecca walked to the subway. Her commute took 40 minutes, giving her plenty of time to think about things she should not be thinking about, like the way Warren's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how solid his shoulder had felt when it brushed against hers. Work provided a welcome distraction. The museum was in the final stages of preparing for the Renaissance exhibit, and Rebecca spent the day coordinating with conservators, adjusting lighting and writing descriptions for each piece. Her assistant, an enthusiastic recent graduate named Sophie, helped her move a particularly heavy sculpture, both of them laughing when they nearly dropped it. "Careful," Rebecca said, steadying the marble base. "If we break a 15th century sculpture, I think we both get fired." "Probably," Sophie agreed, wiping sweat from her forehead. Though what a way to go. By the time Rebecca made it home that evening, she was exhausted but satisfied. The exhibit was coming together beautifully, and she allowed herself a moment of pride as she unlocked her apartment door. Inside, everything was finally in place. Pictures hung on the walls, books filled the shelves, and her space felt lived in rather than temporary. She had just changed into comfortable clothes and was contemplating dinner when there was a knock at her door. Surprised, she checked the peephole and felt her pulse quicken when she saw Warren standing in the hallway, holding what looked like a casserole dish. Rebecca opened the door, trying not to look as flustered as she felt. "Hi." "Hi," Warren said, and he actually looked a little nervous, which she found endearing. "I know this is probably weird, but I made too much lasagna and thought you might want some. Moving is exhausting, and cooking is probably the last thing you want to deal with." Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest. "That is really thoughtful, thank you." She took the dish, the ceramic warm through her oven mitts, and found herself adding, "Do you want to come in?" "I was just about to eat, and it seems silly for us to eat the same food alone when we are literally next door to each other." Warren's smile was immediate and genuine. "I would like that." She stepped aside to let him in, suddenly hyper-conscious of every detail of her apartment. But Warren did not seem to be judging. Instead, he looked around with interest, pausing at the bookshelf she had spent hours organizing. "Wow," he said, moving closer to examine the titles. "This is an impressive collection." "I am a bit of a book hoarder," Rebecca admitted, heading to the kitchen to grab plates. "I keep telling myself I will get an e-reader, but there is something about physical books I cannot give up." "I get that," Warren said, still scanning the shelves. "Though I have to admit, most of my reading is business journals these days. Not nearly as interesting as," he pulled a book out slightly, "The Count of Monte Cristo." "One of my favorites," Rebecca said, returning with plates and silverware. "Have you read it?" "In high school," Warren said, helping her set the small dining table. "I remember enjoying it, but I am sure I missed half the nuance." They sat down to eat, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had at the coffee shop. Warren told her about a difficult client he was dealing with, someone who kept changing their mind about a building design, and Rebecca commiserated with stories of museum donors with very specific and sometimes ridiculous requests. One woman wanted us to light her donated paintings with actual candlelight, Rebecca said, watching Warren's eyes widen. Because that is how they would have been seen originally. Never mind the fire hazard or the smoke damage. Please tell me you said no, Warren said, serving himself more lasagna. Very diplomatically, Rebecca assured him. We offered to use LED candles as a compromise. She was not thrilled, but she accepted it. Warren shook his head, grinning. The things you must have to deal with. I thought my clients were difficult. Everyone thinks their job has the most difficult clients, Rebecca said wisely. It is a universal truth. After dinner, Warren insisted on helping with the dishes despite Rebecca's protests. They stood side by side at her sink, him washing while she dried, and the domesticity of it made her heart ache in a way she had not expected. It felt natural, comfortable, like they had been doing this for years, instead of having known each other for less than a week. Thanks for sharing dinner with me, Warren said as they finished, drying his hands on a towel. It is nice to have company. The apartment can feel pretty empty sometimes. I know what you mean, Rebecca said, leaning against the counter. I have been on my own for a while now, and most of the time I love it. But sometimes it is nice to have someone to talk to. Warren looked at her, and there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. Well, you have got a neighbor now who makes too much food on a regular basis. So feel free to take advantage of that. I might just do that, Rebecca said softly. He left shortly after, and Rebecca spent the rest of the evening trying and failing to focus on the book she was reading. Her mind kept drifting back to Warren, to the easy way they interacted, to the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. She was in trouble, she realized. Deep, complicated, wonderful trouble. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Rebecca and Warren ran into each other often, sometimes by chance in the elevator or lobby, sometimes by design when one of them suggested coffee or dinner. They discovered they both liked old movies and spent one rainy Saturday watching Casablanca in Warren's apartment, which was larger than hers and decorated with understated elegance. I had a decorator help, Warren admitted when she complimented his furniture. Left to my own devices, I would probably have a couch and a TV and call it done. Nothing wrong with minimalism, Rebecca said, curled up on the opposite end of his very comfortable sectional. There is minimalism, and then there is laziness, Warren said with a self-deprecating smile. I definitely fall into the second category when it comes to home decor. They grew comfortable with each other, comfortable enough that Rebecca did not think twice about calling Warren when her bathroom sink started leaking at 10 at night. He showed up in sweatpants and a t-shirt, toolbox in hand, and fixed the problem in under 15 minutes. Where did you learn to do that? Rebecca asked, impressed, as she handed him a towel to dry his hands. My dad, Warren said, and something soft crossed his face. He was a contractor. Insisted I learn basic home repair before I went to college. Said I would thank him later. Smart man, Rebecca said. Was he right? Absolutely, Warren said with a laugh. I have saved myself thousands in repair bills over the years. Rebecca wanted to ask more about his father, about his family, but Warren had already moved on, asking about her day at the museum. She let it go, filing away the information for later. Everyone had topics they were not ready to discuss, and she respected that. It was early November when everything shifted. Rebecca had been invited to a gallery opening by a colleague, one of those stuffy events where everyone wore black and pretended to understand abstract art that looked like a toddler's finger painting. She normally avoided these things, but her boss had strongly suggested she attend, which was code for it was mandatory. She was standing in front of a canvas covered in aggressive red slashes, trying to think of something intelligent to say about it, when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Personally, I think it is upside down." Rebecca turned to find Warren standing there in a tailored charcoal suit that made her mouth go dry. She had seen him dressed for work before, but never like this, never looking like he had just stepped out of a magazine. "Warren," she said, hoping her voice sounded normal. "What are you doing here? Could ask you the same thing," he said, moving to stand beside her. "Though I am guessing your reason is better than mine. Someone I do business with is friends with the artist. I am here out of obligation." "Same," Rebecca admitted, relieved. "My boss thought I should network. I hate these things." "Want to escape?" Warren asked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "There is a food truck festival 2 blocks from here. Real food instead of these sad crackers and cheese cubes." Rebecca glanced around the gallery. She had been there for 30 minutes, which was probably long enough to satisfy her boss. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." They slipped out together, and the cool November air was a relief after the stuffy gallery. The food truck festival was crowded and loud and perfect, with dozens of trucks offering everything from tacos to crepes to gourmet grilled cheese. They got food from 3 different trucks and found a bench in a nearby park, juggling their various containers. "This is so much better than the gallery," Rebecca said through a mouthful of the best taco she had ever had. "Right," Warren said, looking more relaxed than she had seen him all night. "I never understand those events. Everyone standing around pretending they are having profound thoughts about art that does not mean anything." "Some of it means something," Rebecca protested mildly. "Just not that particular piece." Warren laughed, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then, as Rebecca was finishing her second taco, Warren said, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Rebecca said, hearing the serious note in his voice. Warren set down his food, looking out at the park. "I have not been completely honest with you about what I do for work." Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. "Okay. I do work in real estate development," Warren continued, "but I am not just an employee. I own the company, Gallagher Development. We do commercial and residential properties all over the country." Rebecca stared at him, processing this information. "You own it?" "Yeah," Warren said, finally looking at her. "And before you ask, yes, I have money, a lot of it. I did not tell you because," he ran a hand through his hair, "people treat me differently when they know. Everything changes. And you were so real, so genuine, and I did not want that to change." Rebecca sat back, trying to organize her thoughts. "Gallagher Development. I have seen that name on buildings downtown." "Probably," Warren said quietly. "We have several properties in the city." "So you are what, a millionaire?" "Billionaire, the second one," Warren admitted, looking uncomfortable. "My company is worth about $3 billion. Rebecca let out a breath. This was surreal. She had been having dinner, watching movies, doing normal, everyday things with a billionaire for the past month. Wow. "I am sorry I did not tell you sooner," Warren said, and he sounded genuinely distressed. "I wanted to. Every time we hung out, I thought about coming clean, but I was worried you would look at me differently." "I mean, I am definitely looking at you differently right now," Rebecca said honestly. "This is a lot to process, Warren. $3 billion is not exactly a minor detail." "I know," Warren said. "And if you want nothing to do with me now, I understand. I just could not keep lying to you. You deserve the truth." Rebecca looked at him, really looked at him. He looked miserable, his shoulders tense, his hands gripping his knees. This was not the confident, easygoing man she had gotten to know. This was someone afraid of losing something important. "I do not want nothing to do with you," she said finally, "but I need some time to think about this." "It is a big thing, Warren. I know," he said again. "Take all the time you need." They walked back to the building in silence, and it felt different now, weighted with things unsaid. In the elevator, Warren said, For what it is worth, everything else I have told you is true. The person you have gotten to know, that is really me. The money does not change who I am." "Maybe not," Rebecca said as the doors opened on their floor, "but it changes a lot of other things." She went into her apartment alone, closing the door and leaning against it. Her mind was racing. Warren was a billionaire, an actual billionaire. The man who had fixed her sink, who had shared lasagna with her, who had made her laugh until her sides hurt. How was that possible? She spent the next 2 days thinking about it, avoiding Warren even though she could hear him moving around in his apartment. Sophie noticed she was distracted at work and asked if everything was okay. Rebecca wanted to confide in her, to ask for advice, but how did you explain this situation? "Oh, by the way, my neighbor is a billionaire and I think I am falling for him." It sounded like a romance novel, not real life. On the third day, Rebecca came home from work to find a note slipped under her door. Warren's handwriting was surprisingly neat, the message short. "I am sorry. I miss talking to you. No pressure, just wanted you to know." Rebecca held the note, reading it 3 times. She missed him too, she realized. Missed their easy conversations, missed having someone to share meals with, missed the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the world. The money was intimidating, sure. But was it really that different from any other detail about a person? If Warren had told her he was an artist or a teacher or a chef, would she have thought twice about pursuing a relationship? No, she would not have. So why should his career as a developer change anything? Because it is not just his career, a voice in her head said. It is billions of dollars. It is a completely different world, but Warren had gone out of his way to keep that world separate, to be normal with her. That had to mean something. Rebecca made her decision. She walked to Warren's door and knocked before she could second-guess herself. He answered quickly, looking surprised to see her, and she noticed he looked tired, like he had not been sleeping well. "Hi," he said cautiously. "Hi," Rebecca replied. "Can I come in?" Warren stepped aside immediately, and she walked into his familiar apartment. They stood in the living room, an awkward distance between them. "I have been thinking," Rebecca started, "about what you told me. And you are right, the money is intimidating. It is a whole part of your life that I do not understand and probably never will completely." But she took a breath. "The Warren I have gotten to know over the past month, that person is who I care about, and I do not think the money changes that person. So if you are willing to be patient with me while I figure out how to navigate all of this, I would like to keep getting to know you." Warren's expression transformed, relief and happiness flooding his features. "Really, really," Rebecca confirmed. "Though I reserve the right to freak out occasionally when I remember just how rich you are." Warren laughed, the sound surprised out of him. "That is fair. I will try to minimize the reminders." "Appreciated," Rebecca said, feeling lighter than she had in days. "So, are we okay?" "We are better than okay," Warren said, and he closed the distance between them, pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home. Rebecca wrapped her arms around him, breathing in his familiar scent, and felt tension she had not realized she was carrying finally release. They pulled apart after a long moment, and Warren said, "I have missed you. 3 days felt like forever." "I missed you too," Rebecca admitted. "My apartment was way too quiet." "Want to order pizza and watch something terrible?" Warren suggested. "That sounds perfect," Rebecca said. They settled into their familiar routine, but something had shifted. There was an awareness now, an acknowledgement of what was building between them. Warren sat closer to her on the couch, and when his hand found hers during the movie, she laced their fingers together without hesitation. The next few weeks were some of the happiest Rebecca could remember. She and Warren spent almost all their free time together, and she slowly got used to the reality of his wealth. He was remarkably down to earth about it, but there were moments that reminded her of the disparity between their lives. Like when she mentioned wanting to see a Broadway show, and he made a phone call and got them house seats for the sold-out production. Or when she complained about her ancient laptop, and he casually offered to buy her a new one, seeming genuinely confused when she insisted on buying it herself. "I am not a charity case," Rebecca told him as they grocery shopped together one Saturday. "I can afford my own things, Warren." "I know you can," Warren said, putting a box of pasta in the cart, "but I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes." "Why would not I want to share it with people I care about?" "Because it is not about the money," Rebecca tried to explain. "It is about maintaining some independence. If you start buying me things, it changes the dynamic between us." Warren was quiet for a moment, pushing the cart down the aisle. "I get that," he said finally. "I am sorry. I am not trying to change anything between us. I just want to make you happy." "You do make me happy," Rebecca said, bumping her shoulder against his. "You, not your wallet." He smiled at that, and she could see him really understanding. They paid for their groceries, splitting the cost, and Warren did not protest. The Renaissance exhibit opened to rave reviews, and Rebecca's boss praised her work effusively at the opening reception. Warren came to support her, and she felt a rush of pride introducing him to her colleagues. He charmed everyone, asking intelligent questions about the art and making conversation that showed he had actually listened to all her rambling about the exhibit. "He is wonderful," Sophie whispered to her when Warren was distracted by the museum director. "And hot. Where did you find him?" "Next door," Rebecca said with a grin. "Literally." "That is some serious luck," Sophie said. "Hold on to that one." As if Rebecca needed the encouragement. She was already in deep, already thinking about Warren constantly, already imagining a future that included him. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. It was mid-December, almost 2 months after they had met, when Warren asked her to dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in the city. Rebecca dressed carefully, choosing a dark blue dress that made her feel elegant, and when Warren arrived at her door in a dark suit, his eyes widened. "You look incredible," he said. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Rebecca replied, her heart racing. The restaurant was the kind of place Rebecca had only read about, with a months-long waiting list and prices that made her wince. But Warren had reserved a private table in a corner with a view of the city lights, and as they sat down, Rebecca felt like she was in a movie. "This is too much," she said, though she could not help smiling. "Nothing is too much for you," Warren said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. They ordered, and as they waited for their food, Warren reached across the table and took her hand. "Rebecca, I need to tell you something." "Okay," she said, trying not to let anxiety creep in. "These past 2 months have been the best of my life," Warren said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Getting to know you, spending time with you, it has made me happier than I have been in years, maybe ever. And I know we have not known each other that long, but I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I have already fallen." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears. "Warren." "You do not have to say anything back," he continued quickly. "I just needed you to know how I feel. You have changed everything for me, Rebecca. You see me, not my bank account or my company, just me, and that means more than I can say." "I love you too," Rebecca said, the words spilling out. "I have been trying not to rush things, trying to be sensible, but Warren, I am completely in love with you." Warren's smile was blinding. He stood up, came around the table and kissed her softly, his hand cupping her cheek. Rebecca melted into him, not caring that they were in a fancy restaurant, not caring about anything except this moment. When they pulled apart, Warren rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that for weeks, he murmured. Me too, Rebecca whispered back. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of happiness. They could not stop touching, fingers intertwined on the table, knees pressed together underneath it. Rebecca felt like she was floating, like this was not quite real. Warren loved her. She loved him. It was simple and complicated and absolutely perfect. They took a car back to the building, Warren's driver navigating the city streets while they sat close in the back seat. Warren had explained about the driver a few weeks ago, how he had a small staff that helped manage his life. Rebecca was still getting used to that level of wealth, but it was getting easier. "Come to my place," Warren said as they rode the elevator up. "I do not want this night to end yet." Rebecca agreed without hesitation. In his apartment, Warren poured them wine and they sat on the couch, her legs draped over his lap, talking about everything and nothing. Eventually, the conversation faded into comfortable silence, and Rebecca found herself studying Warren's face, memorizing every detail. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his hand resting on her ankle. "That I am really happy," Rebecca said honestly, "and a little scared." "Scared of what?" "Of how much I feel for you," Rebecca admitted. "We have only known each other 2 months, Warren. This is fast." "It is fast," Warren agreed. "But does it feel wrong to you?" Rebecca considered that, really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "It feels right. That is what scares me. It should not feel this right this quickly." "Why not?" Warren asked gently. "Who made up that rule? Love does not follow a timeline, Rebecca. It happens when it happens." "Is that what this is?" Rebecca asked. "Love, for me, yes," Warren said. "Completely, I love you, Rebecca Zimmerman. Every stubborn, brilliant, beautiful part of you." Rebecca felt tears well up again. "I love you too, so much it terrifies me." Warren pulled her closer and she went willingly, curling into his chest. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the city lights twinkling outside the window. As winter deepened, Rebecca and Warren became inseparable. They spent Christmas together, and Warren invited her to a charity gala his company was sponsoring. Rebecca wore a borrowed designer dress, courtesy of Sophie's sister who worked in fashion, and felt out of place among the glittering crowd until Warren took her hand and whispered, "You are the most beautiful woman here." "You have to say that," Rebecca whispered back, trying not to gawk at the opulent venue. "I do not have to say anything," Warren corrected. "I want to say it because it is true." The gala was overwhelming, full of people who knew Warren's name and wanted his attention. He handled it all with practiced ease, but Rebecca could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he smiled just a little too politely at some of the guests. When they finally escaped to a quiet balcony, Warren let out a long breath. "I hate these things," he said, leaning against the railing. "Then why do them?" Rebecca asked, joining him and wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. Warren shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders before answering. "Obligation. Expectation. My company donates a lot of money to charity, and people expect me to show up and be visible. It is part of the job." "That does not seem fair," Rebecca said. "You should not have to perform for people." "That is exactly what it feels like sometimes," Warren said, looking at her with such openness that it made her heart ache. "Performing, but with you I do not have to do that. I can just be myself." Rebecca reached up and kissed him, tasting champagne on his lips. "Then let us get out of here. Go somewhere you can actually breathe." They left the gala early, much to the surprise of Warren's assistant who had been coordinating his schedule. They ended up at a 24-hour diner in Brooklyn, sitting in a cracked vinyl booth and eating pancakes at midnight. Warren looked more relaxed than he had all night, his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. "This is perfect," he said, stealing a bite of her hash browns. "Better than a 5-star gala," Rebecca teased. Infinitely better, Warren said seriously. Because you are here and we are not pretending to be anyone we are not. Rebecca understood then, really understood, why Warren had kept his wealth a secret initially. In his world, everything came with strings attached, with expectations and performances. But with her, in a dingy diner at midnight, he could just be Warren. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just the man she loved. The new year arrived with snow and cold winds. Rebecca's museum started planning for the spring season, and she found herself working longer hours. Warren was understanding, even though she could see he missed spending every evening with her. He would show up at her apartment after work with takeout, content to sit quietly while she finished emails or reviewed exhibition plans. "You do not have to babysit me," Rebecca told him one night, looking up from her laptop. "I know this is boring." "It is not boring," Warren said from his spot on her couch. "I like being near you even if we are not talking. Besides, I have plenty of work to catch up on too." He pulled out his own laptop, and they worked in companionable silence. Rebecca found it comforting, this domestic routine they had fallen into. It felt real solid, like they were building something that would last. In February, Warren had to travel for business, a week-long trip to California to oversee a new development project. Rebecca helped him pack, folding shirts and trying not to show how much she was going to miss him. "It is only a week," Warren said, watching her from the bed. "I will call every day." "I know," Rebecca said, placing a folded shirt in his suitcase. "I am being ridiculous." Warren got up and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You are not being ridiculous. I am going to miss you too. But I will be back before you know it, and then I am taking you away for the weekend. Somewhere warm." "I will hold you to that," Rebecca said, turning in his arms to kiss him. The week dragged. They did video call every night, but it was not the same as having Warren next to her. Rebecca threw herself into work, trying to stay busy. Sophie noticed her moping and dragged her out for drinks one night. "You have got it bad," Sophie observed, sipping her margarita. "I really do," Rebecca admitted. "Is that pathetic? We have only been together a few months." "It is not pathetic, it is sweet," Sophie said. "Though I have to admit I am insanely jealous. You found a hot, rich guy who is actually a good person. Do you know how rare that is?" "I am aware," Rebecca said with a small smile. "Sometimes I worry I am going to wake up and it will all have been a dream." "Please," Sophie scoffed. "That man is crazy about you. I saw the way he looked at you at the exhibit opening, like you hung the moon." Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest. "He does kind of look at me like that, does not he?" "Yep," Sophie confirmed. "It is gross and adorable in equal measure." When Warren finally came home, Rebecca practically tackled him in the hallway outside their apartments. He dropped his suitcase to catch her, laughing as she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Miss me?" he asked, his face buried in her hair. "So much," Rebecca said. "Do not leave again." "I will try my best," Warren promised, "though I might have to disappoint you on that front. Travel is part of the job." "Then I will just have to come with you sometimes," Rebecca suggested. Warren pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. "Would you really want to do that? If it means being with you, yes," Rebecca said simply. That weekend, Warren made good on his promise and took her to a beach resort in the Caribbean. Rebecca had never been to a place like this. All white sand and crystal blue water and a private bungalow that probably cost more than her monthly salary. She tried not to think about the expense and just enjoy it, lying on the beach with Warren, swimming in the ocean, eating fresh seafood as the sun set. "I could get used to this," she said, curled up next to Warren on a lounge chair. "Good," Warren said, playing with her hair. "Because I plan on taking you a lot more places." "Warren," Rebecca started, then hesitated. "What is it?" he asked, hearing the uncertainty in her voice. "I just do not want you to think you have to spend money on me to make me happy," Rebecca said carefully. "I love this. It is wonderful, but I would be just as happy in my apartment watching movies with you." Warren was quiet for a moment. "I know that," he said finally. "And that is one of the things I love most about you. You are not with me for the money." "But Rebecca, I have more resources than most people can imagine, and I want to share experiences with you. Not because I think I have to, but because it makes me happy to see you happy. Can you understand that?" Rebecca turned to look at him. "I can try." "That is all I ask," Warren said, kissing her forehead. "Just let me spoil you occasionally. I promise not to go overboard." "Occasionally," Rebecca agreed. "But I am buying dinner at least half the time when we are home." Warren laughed. "Deal." Spring arrived with blooming flowers and warmer weather. Rebecca's museum hosted a fundraising gala, and she spent weeks planning every detail. Warren helped where he could, using his business connections to secure donations and sponsors. The night of the event, Rebecca was a bundle of nerves, triple-checking every arrangement. "It is going to be perfect," Warren assured her, straightening his bow tie in her bathroom mirror. "You have thought of everything. What if something goes wrong?" Rebecca fretted, adjusting her red dress for the 100th time. Warren turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Then we will deal with it. But Rebecca, you are incredible at your job. This gala is going to be a huge success because you made it that way." The event was indeed a success, raising more money than the museum had projected. Rebecca's boss pulled her aside to congratulate her, and she felt a surge of professional pride. Warren stayed by her side all night, charming donors and supporting her, and when the last guest finally left, she collapsed into a chair. "I am exhausted," she declared. "You were amazing," Warren said, sitting beside her. "Watching you work tonight, seeing how passionate you are about the museum, I fell in love with you all over again." Rebecca looked at him, this man who had become her everything. "I love you too, so much." As summer approached, they celebrated their 6-month anniversary with a quiet dinner at Warren's apartment. He cooked, which Rebecca still found amusing since he insisted he was a terrible chef, and they ate on the balcony under string lights Warren had hung just for the occasion. "I have something for you," Warren said as they finished dessert. "Warren, we said no gifts," Rebecca protested. "This is not a gift exactly," Warren said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Just something I saw and thought of you." Rebecca opened the box to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a paintbrush. "Oh," she breathed. "Warren, it is beautiful." "For the curator who makes art come alive," Warren said softly. "I know you said no expensive gifts, so I made sure it was not diamonds or anything like that, just something simple." Rebecca put on the bracelet, admiring how it caught the light. "Thank you. I love it." They kissed under the stars, and Rebecca felt a contentment she had never experienced before. This was what happiness felt like, she realized. Not the dramatic highs and lows of her previous relationships, but this steady, deep sense of rightness. July brought oppressive heat and the need for air conditioning. Rebecca's unit struggled to keep up, and she spent more and more time at Warren's apartment, which had a much better system. One particularly hot afternoon, they were sprawled on his couch, trying to motivate themselves to move. "We could go to the beach house," Warren suggested lazily. "Beach house?" Rebecca asked, turning her head to look at him. "I have a place in the Hamptons," Warren said. "Nothing too crazy, just a house on the water. We could spend a few days there, escape the heat." Rebecca had gotten better at not freaking out when Warren casually mentioned things like having a beach house in the Hamptons, but it still sometimes caught her off guard. "That sounds amazing, actually." They drove out the next morning in Warren's car, the first time Rebecca had seen him drive himself anywhere. The beach house was, predictably, stunning, all modern architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the ocean. But it also felt comfortable, lived in, with books on the shelves and soft blankets draped over furniture. "I come here when I need to think," Warren explained, setting their bags down in the master bedroom. "It is the one place where I feel completely isolated from the business." They spent 3 glorious days at the beach house, swimming in the ocean, cooking meals together, making love in the big bed with the windows open so they could hear the waves. It was intimate and perfect, and Rebecca felt their relationship deepening with every conversation, every touch, every shared moment. One evening, as they sat on the deck watching the sunset, Warren said, "I want you to move in with me." Rebecca turned to him, surprised. "What?" "Move in with me," Warren repeated, taking her hand. "I know we have only been together 6 months, but Rebecca, I do not want to spend another night without you. Your apartment is fine, but it is not big enough for both of us and all your books. My place has plenty of room, and you are there most of the time anyway." "Warren, that is a big step," Rebecca said, her heart racing. "I know," Warren said. "And if you are not ready, I understand, but I want you to know that I am. I am all in with you, Rebecca. Have been from the beginning." Rebecca thought about it, really considered what he was asking. Moving in together would change everything, would make their relationship even more serious and committed. But the truth was, she was already all in too. She could not imagine her life without Warren, did not want to. "Okay," she said, watching his face light up. "Let us do it. Let us move in together." Warren kissed her, deep and passionate, and Rebecca felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The move happened gradually over the next month. Rebecca's lease was not up until the end of August, so she had time to pack properly and decide what to bring and what to get rid of. Warren cleared out half his closet and several shelves, giving her space that he insisted was now hers. Her books filled an entire bookcase, and Warren helped her organize them, teasing her about her refusal to alphabetize. "It is organized by feeling," Rebecca explained. "Books I read when I am happy, books I read when I am sad, books I read when I need to think." "That makes absolutely no sense," Warren said, but he was smiling. "It does not have to make sense to you," Rebecca said. "It makes sense to me." Living together was an adjustment, but a surprisingly easy one. They fell into routines, learning each other's habits and quirks. Warren was an early riser who went for a run every morning, while Rebecca liked to sleep in on weekends. He took his coffee black. She loaded hers with cream and sugar. He was neat to the point of being meticulous. She tended to leave things lying around. But they made it work, compromising and communicating, and the apartment truly felt like theirs. One Saturday in September, Rebecca woke to find Warren's side of the bed empty. She got up, pulling on one of his T-shirts, and found him on the balcony with his laptop. He looked stressed, his jaw tight, and she approached cautiously. "Hey," she said softly. "Everything okay?" Warren looked up, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "One of my projects is falling apart. The contractor we hired has been cutting corners, and now the building is not up to code. We have to tear down months of work and start over." "I am sorry," Rebecca said, sitting beside him. "That sounds awful." "It is going to cost millions to fix," Warren said, rubbing his face, "and delay the project by at least 6 months. I have investors breathing down my neck, and I do not have good answers for them." Rebecca put her hand on his knee, offering silent support. Warren covered her hand with his, and they sat there quietly for a while, watching the city wake up below them. "I do not talk about work stress much," Warren said eventually. "I did not want to burden you with it." "Warren, we live together now," Rebecca said gently. You are not burdening me. I want to be here for you, good times and bad. Warren pulled her closer, and she felt the tension in his body. Sometimes I forget that I can lean on you. I have been dealing with everything on my own for so long. You do not have to anymore, Rebecca promised. I am here, whatever you need. That conversation marked a shift in their relationship. Warren started opening up more about the pressures of running his company, the difficult decisions he had to make, the weight of being responsible for hundreds of employees. Rebecca listened and supported, offering perspective when she could, but mostly just being there. In turn, Warren encouraged her when she struggled with difficult projects at the museum or dealt with demanding donors. They were building a life together, Rebecca realized, not just living in the same space, but truly partnering with each other. October brought cool weather and the start of a busy season at the museum. Rebecca was curating a modern art exhibit, something outside her usual comfort zone, and she threw herself into the work. Warren helped her practice her presentation for the museum board, offering feedback and encouragement. "You are going to nail this," he said after she finished a run-through. "Your passion comes through in every word." "I just want them to understand why this work matters," Rebecca said. "Modern art gets dismissed so easily, but it is just as important as the Renaissance pieces I love." The board presentation went well, and the exhibit was approved. Rebecca celebrated by cooking dinner for Warren, attempting his grandmother's lasagna recipe that he had shared with her. It was not quite as good as his, but he ate 3 helpings and declared it delicious. "You are just being nice," Rebecca said, pleased despite herself. "I am not," Warren insisted. "It is really good, maybe a little heavy on the oregano, but good." Rebecca threw a dish towel at him and he caught it, laughing. These were the moments she treasured most, the silly, domestic moments that made up a real relationship. As the holidays approached, Warren asked Rebecca what she wanted to do for Thanksgiving. "We could go to the beach house or stay here, or I could take you anywhere you want to go." "What do you usually do?" Rebecca asked. Warren shrugged. "The past few years I have just worked through it. Thanksgiving was not a big thing in my family after my parents passed." Rebecca's heart ached for him. "I am sorry, I did not know you lost both of them." "Car accident when I was 22, Warren said quietly. "Right after I graduated college. It is why I threw myself into building the company. I needed something to focus on." Rebecca took his hand, understanding so much more about him now. "We should do something special this year. Create new traditions." They ended up hosting Thanksgiving at the apartment, inviting Sophie and a few of Rebecca's other friends from the museum, plus Warren's assistant and her family. It was chaotic and loud and perfect, the apartment filled with laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. Warren looked happier than Rebecca had seen him, and when she found him in the kitchen later, he pulled her into a hug. "Thank you," he said into her hair. "This is exactly what I needed." "Me too," Rebecca said, meaning it completely. December was a whirlwind of holiday parties and events. Warren's company had its annual gala, and Rebecca wore a stunning emerald dress that Warren had insisted on buying for her. She had learned to pick her battles about his spending, and she had to admit, the dress made her feel like a princess. "You look like a dream," Warren said when she emerged from the bedroom. "Absolutely stunning." The gala was grand and impressive, but Rebecca found herself more interested in watching Warren work the room. He had a gift for making people feel heard, for asking the right questions and really listening to the answers. She saw why he was so successful and felt a surge of pride that this incredible man had chosen her. On Christmas morning, they exchanged gifts in their pajamas, the tree lit up and snow falling outside the windows. Rebecca gave Warren a vintage watch she had found at an antique store, knowing he loved collecting them. He gave her a first edition of her favorite book, something she had mentioned wanting once months ago and had assumed he had forgotten. "How did you find this?" she asked, carefully turning the pages. "I have my ways," Warren said with a mysterious smile. "Do you like it?" "I love it," Rebecca said, tears in her eyes. "Warren, this must have cost a fortune." "Worth every penny to see that look on your face," Warren said, kissing her softly. "Merry Christmas, Rebecca." "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. As the new year approached, Rebecca found herself reflecting on the past 15 months. She had moved into a new apartment, never expecting that the man next door would become the center of her world. But here she was, completely in love, building a life with someone who made her happier than she had thought possible. On New Year's Eve, they went to a party at a friend's loft, but left before midnight to watch the fireworks from their balcony. As the clock struck 12, Warren turned to her, and Rebecca saw something significant in his eyes. "I have been thinking about the future a lot lately," Warren said, his hands holding hers. "Our future. And Rebecca, I cannot imagine my life without you in it. You have made me happier than I have ever been. You have shown me what it means to be truly seen and loved for who I am, not what I have." Rebecca's heart was pounding as Warren reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we have not been together as long as some couples wait," Warren continued, dropping to one knee. "But I also know that time does not matter when you find the right person, and you are the right person for me, Rebecca. You are my best friend, my partner, my home. Will you marry me?" Rebecca was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face as she looked at the beautiful ring Warren was holding. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Warren stood and slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her as fireworks exploded over the city. Rebecca kissed him back, pouring all her love and joy into it, knowing that this was just the beginning of their story. The engagement brought a new level of excitement to their lives. They told Sophie first, who screamed so loudly that Warren winced. Rebecca's parents, who she called immediately after, were thrilled, though her mother had a million questions about wedding plans. Warren's extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins he stayed in touch with, welcomed Rebecca warmly when Warren brought her to meet them. They decided on a fall wedding, giving themselves almost a year to plan. Rebecca had always dreamed of an autumn ceremony, and Warren agreed immediately, saying he just wanted her happy. They visited venues and met with caterers and sampled cakes, making decisions together and compromising when their visions differed. Through it all, they continued building their life together. Warren surprised her with a kitten in February, a tiny gray ball of fluff that Rebecca named Monet. The cat quickly took over the apartment, and Warren pretended to be annoyed even though Rebecca caught him playing with Monet when he thought she was not looking. Work continued for both of them. Rebecca's modern art exhibit opened to critical acclaim, and she was offered a promotion to senior curator. Warren's company recovered from the contractor disaster and landed a huge project in Seattle that would require him to travel more. They navigated the challenges together, supporting each other through stressful days and celebrating the victories. In May, they bought a house together, a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn with enough space for a home office for each of them and a backyard for future children, though they had not talked seriously about that yet. Moving into the house felt significant, another step toward the future they were building. "This is ours," Rebecca said, standing in the empty living room on move-in day. "Not yours, not mine, ours." "Ours," Warren agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Everything I have is yours, Rebecca. Has been since the day I met you." "That is not true," Rebecca said with a laugh. "It took at least a week." Warren laughed too, and they spent the rest of the day unpacking boxes and arguing about furniture placement, happy and in love and home. Summer brought wedding planning into full swing. They chose a venue in upstate New York, a historic estate with gardens and a view of the mountains. Rebecca found her dress, a simple but elegant creation that made her feel beautiful. Warren refused to let her see his suit, wanting it to be a surprise. His bachelor party, organized by his college friends, was apparently legendary, though Warren would only say that what happened in Vegas stayed in Vegas. Rebecca's bachelorette party was a more tame affair, a weekend at a spa with Sophie and her closest friends. They drank champagne and got massages and talked about love and marriage and the future. "I am so happy for you," Sophie said as they sat in the sauna. "You and Warren are perfect together." "He is pretty amazing," Rebecca admitted. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life." "Believe it," Sophie said firmly. "You deserve all of this happiness." The week before the wedding was chaotic. Family arrived from out of town, last-minute details needed attention, and Rebecca found herself stressed despite her best efforts to stay calm. Warren was her rock, handling problems before they reached her, making sure she ate and slept, reminding her that the wedding was just one day and their marriage was what really mattered. The night before the wedding, they broke tradition and spent the evening together, having dinner at their favorite restaurant. "I do not care about superstitions," Warren had said. "I want to see you." They talked about everything and nothing, holding hands across the table, savoring these last hours before their lives changed forever. "Are you nervous?" Rebecca asked as they walked home under the stars. "Not even a little," Warren said. "Marrying you is the easiest decision I have ever made." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, autumn leaves at peak color and a perfect breeze. Rebecca got ready surrounded by her bridesmaids, Sophie making sure every detail was perfect. When she finally saw herself in the full-length mirror, dress on and hair done, she felt tears prick her eyes. "You look like a princess," her mother said, fixing her veil. "Warren is going to lose his mind when he sees you." The ceremony was held in the garden at sunset, chairs arranged in rows for the 100 guests they had invited. Rebecca walked down the aisle on her father's arm, but her eyes were locked on Warren, who stood at the altar in a dark blue suit, watching her with such love that she felt it like a physical force. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, and when it was Rebecca's turn, she looked into Warren's eyes and said, "You changed my life the moment I met you. You saw me for who I really am, and you loved me anyway. You have been my partner, my best friend, my home. I promise to stand by you through everything life brings. I promise to love you not just on the easy days, but on the hard ones too. I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives." Warren's vows were just as moving. "Rebecca, you walked into my life and everything changed. You taught me what it means to be truly known and loved. You brought light and laughter and joy into my world. I promise to support your dreams, to challenge you when you need it, to comfort you when life gets hard. I promise to be honest with you, to communicate with you, to always make us a priority. I promise to love you with everything I have, for as long as I live." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Warren kissed her like they were the only two people in the world, and Rebecca felt happiness so profound it almost hurt. The reception was a blur of dancing and laughter and toasts that made them both cry. They cut the cake, had their first dance to a song they had chosen together, and celebrated with everyone they loved. As the night wound down, Warren pulled Rebecca aside to the gardens where they had said their vows. "Hello, wife," he said, pulling her close. "Hello, husband," Rebecca replied, loving the way the words felt. They stood there swaying to music only they could hear, and Rebecca thought about the path that had brought them here. A moving truck, a man on a balcony, a chance encounter that had become everything. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Warren asked. "For being my neighbor. For sharing lasagna with me, for seeing me, for loving me." Warren kissed her forehead. "Best decision I ever made, becoming friends with the woman next door. Just friends," Rebecca teased. "Well, maybe a little more than friends," Warren conceded with a smile. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks exploring art museums and eating incredible food and making love in beautiful hotels. Warren surprised her by speaking passable Italian, something he had been secretly learning for months. They visited the museums Rebecca had borrowed from for her Renaissance exhibit, and she got to see work she had only experienced through photographs. "This is a dream," she told Warren as they stood in front of a Caravaggio in Rome. "All of it. You are a dream." "Very real," Warren assured her, "and very lucky." When they returned home, they settled into married life with the same ease they had approached everything else. Rebecca went back to work at the museum, Warren to his company. They had dinner together every night they were both in town, talking about their days and making plans for the future. In their second year of marriage, they decided to start trying for a baby. It happened faster than they expected, and Rebecca found out she was pregnant on a random Tuesday in March. She surprised Warren by hiding the positive test in his briefcase with a note that said, "Looks like we are going to need a bigger house." Warren called her from work, voice shaking with emotion. "Are you serious? We are having a baby. We are having a baby," Rebecca confirmed, crying happy tears. "Are you excited?" "Excited does not even begin to cover it," Warren said. "I am coming home. I love you so much, Rebecca." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Rebecca did have some morning sickness that Warren handled like a champion, holding her hair back and bringing her crackers in bed. They found out they were having a girl, and Warren immediately started talking about how he was going to spoil her. "She is going to have you wrapped around her little finger," Rebecca predicted, watching him assemble a crib. "Probably," Warren admitted, "but you have me wrapped around your finger too, so she will come by it honestly." Their daughter was born in November, on a cool autumn day that reminded Rebecca of their wedding. Labor was long and difficult, but Warren never left her side, coaching her through contractions and telling her how strong she was. When the baby finally arrived, healthy and loud and perfect, Warren cut the cord with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. "She is beautiful," he said, cradling their daughter, "just like her mother." They named her Grace, and she became the center of their universe. Warren was an incredible father, patient and loving and completely devoted. Rebecca watched him sing to Grace at 3 in the morning, watched him change diapers and rock her to sleep, and fell in love with him all over again. Life was chaotic with a newborn, but they made it work. Warren's mother came to stay for a few weeks, helping with the baby while Rebecca recovered. Sophie brought meals and offered to babysit. Their house filled with baby gear and laughter, and the kind of joy Rebecca had not known was possible. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, James, and their family felt complete. Warren scaled back his work travel, wanting to be present for every moment with their children. Rebecca continued her work at the museum but moved to a more flexible schedule. They hired a nanny to help during work hours, but evenings and weekends were sacred family time. Grace started preschool, James learned to walk, and the years passed in a beautiful blur. They bought a bigger house in the suburbs with a yard where the kids could play. They took family vacations and had Sunday brunches and created traditions. Warren taught Grace about art while Rebecca taught James about numbers. They were partners in every sense, building a life neither of them had imagined when they first met. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren surprised Rebecca with a trip back to Italy, just the two of them. They left the kids with Warren's mother and spent a week recreating their honeymoon. On their last night, over dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Amalfi Coast, Warren took her hand. "I have been thinking about that day you moved in next door," he said. "If I had known then what I know now, how much you would change my life, I think my heart would have exploded." Rebecca laughed. "That is dramatic, even for you." "Maybe," Warren conceded. "But Rebecca, you have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a family, a love I did not think existed outside of movies. I love you more now than I did when we got married, and I loved you so much then I thought I would burst with it." "I love you too," Rebecca said, squeezing his hand. "More than words can say. You are my best friend, Warren, my partner in everything. I cannot imagine any version of my life that does not have you in it." "Good thing you never have to," Warren said, raising his glass. "To the woman next door who became my everything. To the billionaire next door who saw me for who I really am," Rebecca replied, clinking her glass against his. They flew home the next day, back to their kids and their house and their beautifully ordinary life. Grace met them at the door with a drawing she had made at school, and James toddled over demanding to be picked up. Warren scooped up both kids, one in each arm, while Rebecca grabbed the bags. They walked inside together, a family, and Rebecca felt the same contentment she had felt so many times before. This was what happiness looked like, she thought. Not the dramatic gestures or expensive gifts, though those were nice. But this, the daily choice to love and be loved, to build a life with someone who saw you completely and loved you anyway. The neighborhood had led to something neither of them had expected, a forever that started with a simple hello and grew into everything. Years later, when Grace was in college and James was in high school, Rebecca would look back on that day she moved into the apartment and marvel at how one decision had changed everything. She would remember the man on the balcony, the coffee shop, the lasagna, all the small moments that had built into a lifetime. And when Warren would ask her, as he sometimes did, if she had any regrets, she would always give him the same answer. Not a single one. You were worth every moment. Because he was, because they were. Because the door next to hers had opened into forever and she had been brave enough to walk through it. And that, Rebecca knew, was the greatest gift life could offer. Not wealth or success or adventure, though they had all of those things, but love. Real, deep, lasting love with someone who chose you every single day. Warren proposed a toast at Grace's graduation party, surrounded by family and friends in their backyard. "To taking chances," he said, his arm around Rebecca. "To saying yes when life offers you something unexpected. To the courage to love and be loved." "Hear, hear," their guests chorused, raising their glasses. Rebecca leaned into her husband, watching their children laugh with their friends, and thought about how a simple move, a new neighbor, a chance encounter had led to this beautiful, messy, perfect life. The billionaire next door had become her husband, her partner, her home, and she had become his. Two people who had found each other against the odds and built something that would last. Forever, it turned out, had been waiting right next door. All they had needed was the courage to open the door and walk through it together. And they had. And it had been worth everything.